Mike Wachira, women's and children's rights advocate. Welcome to the JSO interview.
Thank you.
More precisely, for the last 7 years, you've been working for an entity called the Center for Rights, Education and Awareness, shortened to CREW.
Yes.
Tell us more.
So CREW, like you rightly said, is Center for Rights, Education and Awareness, and our vision is to have a society where women, men and children enjoy equal rights and opportunities. Because we know in the society, we have a society that's completely unequal, where some people can access rights, others don't even understand what their rights are, and we've got this massive inequality that's there in society. And the people who get affected the most are women and children. And so the work that we do is to promote and protect the rights of women and children. And we do this in a couple of ways. We've got 3 main programs that help us do this work. One is our Access to Justice program, where we provide free legal aid and psychosocial support to women and children. We work with children who are in conflict with the law. We work with women who are trying to access various rights and have reached various stumbling blocks. We also work with men, because we realize that a lot of the perpetrators are men. When you look at sexual violence, it would not augur well to just work with the survivors of violence, but we also need to address the ones who are perpetrating it. We work with institutions, we work with government, we work with other civil society organizations. Most importantly, we work with the communities.
I would like to draw your attention to some stories that we've been running on our particular channel of late. One of them concerns a child. You see a child who was sexually abused by the father. Another involves a child who was not allowed to sit for her exams because she had refused the sexual advances of a head teacher. Now, you are working for an NGO,
right?
But within the Constitution, the government guarantees the safety of its citizens, Article number 53. Now, who's doing whose job? Are you working for government? Is government working for you? Where does the responsibility ultimately lie?
The responsibility ultimately lies with all of us, because we cannot it would not do any value to sit and point fingers and say the government is not working, civil society is not working, or even the community itself is not working. We all have a responsibility towards ensuring a safe environment for children to grow. And so if you look at, like you rightly said, Article 53 of the Constitution puts that responsibility on the government to promote a sort of environment where children can have sustainable development, where children are able to go to school, where they have shelter, where they have nutrition, they have got access to healthcare. And so primarily the responsibility is on government.
Right, okay, I agree with you entirely. I would like, because of the time factor, to concentrate very much on this issue of child abuse. And the first comment to make is that for the longest time we've been encouraged to believe that our culture, our tradition, in a word, Africans don't do that. And let's not define Africans, let's just go for the stereotype. It's easy, we don't behave like that.
Which is not true. Because if you look at the rising cases that are reported in the press, if you look at Nairobi Women's Hospital, for example, the kind of cases that they get there of defilement, where somebody would defile a month-old baby, where somebody would defile a child, where somebody would even defile their own daughter or sodomize their son. The evidence clearly shows that despite what we would like to think that our customs and traditions brought us up in a certain way, there's a problem in society that is making these sort of cases become more prevalent. And that is what we need to now focus our attention on.
Would you be drawn as to what the problem might be, or are you just saying there is a problem?
There is a problem, because I dare say that there's anybody who can sit here and authoritatively say they understand why a man would defile a 2-year-old child. So there is an issue that needs to be looked at, and it's a societal issue because it affects everybody. There's an issue that needs to be looked at.
Are we going to be ethnic about all this? Are we going to say there's a people in central province or northern province or the coast? Is it now, if it's not a racial problem, are we going to name names? Are certain societies more prone than others?
I would not say certain societies are more prone than others, because you would find these cases almost everywhere that you go in this country. What happens is that in some societies, the safeguards that would be there to protect children may be less than in other areas. And so in places where people are more clued in about how to create a safe environment for children, you may find less incidences happening than in places where people are not. And again, like I said, it is an area of research that needs to be really looked into to understand what would drive somebody to create.
Allied closely with alcoholism, drug abuse, is that the somebody's drunk and then goes and defiles his or her child? Is that it?
Those are some of the factors that would make somebody go and do that. You know, there's the drug abuse, and those are some of the safe things that we usually fall back on, because we have not really carried in-depth research to understand what is the psyche of somebody who does or commits that kind of offense. And so we generally tend to fall back to something that we understand, because it's a very scary issue to think that somebody in their right minds would just wake up and decide to go and commit that kind of offense. And so we fall back on something that we are able to understand and say, okay, he must have been drunk, or ilikuwa shetani alimuingia. Yes. Or he's on drugs, he's on bang, you know. So those are the kind of things that we tend to fall back on without really looking deeper to understand what is the psyche of this person.
But I would draw you closer, is that most people doing things, other people are aware of what's being done. So if you went into a village, everybody would say, Unim Christo, Hanyu Pombe, you know, he's a teetotaler, his behavior is well known to us. So in other words, people know that Mr. X across the door here defiles his 2-year-old daughter.
Yes, they do.
But then what are they meant to do?
Actually, the Children's Act does give that power to anybody who comes across an offense that is being committed on a child to report that offense, whether that child is yours or not. But that presents societal challenges, because nobody wants to be seen in the community as a person who pointed fingers and said, oh, you know, XYZ is defiling the child. You know, and then the other thing is that the evidence to prove that sometimes is very difficult, because you would need somebody in the family to testify against either the father or the mother or the person who's committing this offense, and that also creates its own challenges.
People aren't adequately disgusted. Nobody's appalled. People are condoning the act. Oh, it's my father, it's my uncle. Let him be. He's always been a bit strange.
I wouldn't say they are condoning it, because I don't think there's anybody who would see that kind of offense and say, okay, well, you know, it's just my dad doing it and be fine with it. I think there are real challenges that present themselves when it comes to reporting those kind of offenses. Take, for example, John, if you're in a family where the man is the one who is providing for the family and the woman doesn't work, and you're talking about low-level income families, and she's thinking she now has to balance between the survival of her family and putting the breadwinner of the family in prison, and then also contending with you know, the discrimination in the society, people pointing fingers, whispering in corners and saying, oh, you know, that family is the one that has those issues happening there. So these are all things that play in people's mind, and then you try, and what usually happens is they balance it out and say, you know what, anyway, let's try and resolve this nawaze. Or you call the chief, or you call your elders or your parents, and you sit and you try and resolve it at that level. It's only in some instances where it has really now gone out of hand that you find somebody actually went and reported.